Hi everyone and welcome to ABCs of Anaesthesia. And in this episode we're going to continue from last week where we were talking about the application process and the ANSCA training program. But in this episode we're going to go through a few more things in a bit more detail. So welcome everyone, my name is Lahiru.
And my name's Kaz.
And today we're going to go through approach to the application process, how to find a critical care job, and also the challenges of references and how to get a good reference. So just to start with, Kaz, what do you reckon? What was your approach to this application process?
Yeah, so I guess my approach to this application process was to really, I spent a fair bit of time thinking about what the kind of selection board wanted and what they were thinking. And this is not purely just a selection criteria, but I try to imagine being in their position and I think appreciating the fact that a lot of residents have very similar experiences and very similar kind of roads and paths to getting there. So really, it made me focus on, this process is actually about thinking about what's my point of difference.
Yeah.
Because I think if you go there and say what you think is the right thing, which is intuitively what you want to say, you realize you start sounding like everyone else.
Yeah. And I think once you start getting on which I think you're doing now, you're helping people with interviews. Once you start helping people with interviews, you go, wow, everyone's the same.
Yeah.
Wow, we're just cookie cutter models of everyone else, which is, I think we agree that diversity is a good thing, but diversity of ideas and personalities is definitely a good thing. And also being authentic is pretty useful because most people can just tell when something's not genuine or not authentic.
Exactly. And I don't think it's not that these people weren't, diverse or they weren't really unique in their own way. It's just I think everyone was saying what was the easiest thing to say, which is I enjoy quick care because I like farm and phys.
Yeah.
I like working with people and I like research.
Yeah.
And I think it's really about imagining being on the other side of the panel. So I think if you've actually interviewed, it's really helpful. So I've been to quite a few times for Melbourne Medical School for entry and both into internship. And when you're sitting there interviewing, it's like some of the sessions we did, I think 30 people in a morning. And by the end of the day, you remember the great ones and you remember the terrible ones that you didn't want to get in. Everyone else is a blur.
Yep.
And I think that process really made me think, oh, wow, I don't want to be part of that blur. How do I stand out?
Yeah.
And then it's about having a good reflection of what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. And I think making the CV, which obviously we'll get to, is a great process because you can look at your CV and go, okay, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, this is what I need to work on. So if you've got 2 pages of, if you've got 30 publications, like one of my friends, I don't think you should focus on research anymore. I think you should be, maybe I should, do some courses. Or
Though if you have 30 publications, you probably don't have to sell yourself at all. Should I come to you? Why do you want me? Interview the interviewers.
What can you do for me?
Okay.
So I think I took, this was kind of my approach to it, and I think really try to think of how you're different. So
this is hard though because there's so much writing on this. When you're in that moment of trying to get onto the training program that you want to get onto, it's really hard to think, genuinely necessarily because it matters so much, and you think this is the be all and end all. And I don't know. I know that I would have sounded like a parrot back in the day.
Yeah.
I think now it's so much easier to say, yeah, sound genuine. But when you're actually in it, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so what's your approach?
So I guess I kept all those things in mind, and what I really tried to do was think about my professional kind of profile. And for me, I had lots of experience in one thing, and I didn't have any experience in another thing. So I knew I had to work on point B or point C. And I really then, while I was working on those things, then I was thinking about, what are the facets of my professional self that are really unique, or what can I talk in a really unique way about, and what are my really interesting experiences? And I really started bringing them to light. So even if there were things that I didn't have super current experience, if it was something that was unique and would make me stand out, I actually made that a more prominent part of my application process.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That's interesting as well. So, to find the things that make you who you truly are, even if it's something you did and failed, that's still interesting.
Definitely.
Because what is it? Just because you're being vulnerable and telling that you stuffed something up doesn't mean that you're a terrible person.
Thank you.
It's just another facet of yourself. I'm trying to think. So how do the people listening to this and watching this, how do they find that point of difference? I've got to think that everyone comes into medicine and it is a pretty narrow path. There's only so many things you can really do. I think broadly you could be very interested in the clinical stuff. Maybe teaching and research come from that. Maybe you're interested in administrative stuff. Maybe you're an IT specialist. But beyond those categories, what else can you really do to make yourself, I guess, a point of difference?
Yeah. So I guess you could
sort of an answer to that, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to hear what you have to say. So my thinking on that is that there's two ways you can be different. You can be outstanding, you can be the best of, or you can be the first of. Okay. I guess the third one would be you could be unique in that field as well. But I think you could be the best of something. You could be the guy with 30 publications. You could be on like a board of a NGO. You could be have done a PhD, whatever.
But let's say there's very few people who are going to be doing that.
Very few.
Okay.
So then it's about taking an experience that I think other people would say is I think everyone would say, and making that unique. So a lot of people love to say they're a great communicator. Okay, that's easy to say.
Yeah.
Anyone could say it. But then you think about, well, what have I done in my experience that makes me a great communicator? So if you are someone who's worked in, so a friend of mine is also a pilot, and he speaks a lot about his pilot training and his crisis resource management, and then brings that out and how those skills actually make him quite a unique communicator
That's just nauseatingly too good.
Yeah, exactly. But the interesting thing is...
But how about for us average Joe Blows or Jane Does? Come on.
But the interesting thing is, when I was doing interview practice, that was such an understated part of his application.
Okay.
And even though it was mentioned, it wasn't, that link wasn't made. So what I really like to do with friends and residents that I do interview practice with is really bring out what it is that makes them different. And so the way I did it was I just had a lot of self-reflection. I chatted with like one of my good mates who I applied with, and we just chatted about how we were different. And what I do with kind of these candidates who are asking me for help now is I just, sit down and have a chat and go, tell me about you. And you just find out what's different. And you just really need something that's not a process you can do inside your head.
Yes.
Because we live looking at life through this lens, and that lens is very current and it's very biased. And, these amazing people just don't talk about some of the amazing stuff they do because they think, oh, well, like the quick care program or the PEDS program aren't going to care that I am an Olympic rower. It's like, actually they do, because there's a lot of...
Again, who are these people No. I mean, I guess, you know how I was saying there's only a few different areas that outside of clinical, there's teaching, research, maybe administrative stuff, and IT, and maybe a few other things. But there's so many things you can do in each of those categories. And to be, you said the best, you don't have to be the best. I think you just have to be really interested in it and have done something, like do something, not nothing, be part of a process that you're getting better and better. I mean, just think of us trying to put out these YouTube videos and podcasts. Like I look at the ones that we started with, and I'm just laughing at them because they're really not great quality, but hey, you got to start somewhere. So even when you're trying to find a point of difference for yourself, I think, if you like doing anything, like for me, teaching feels natural. I enjoy talking to people and I enjoy sharing ideas. And even if I'm terrible at something, if I've just learnt it, I want to teach it onwards. So that was easy for me. Whereas other people just love data. Other people, love collaborating with in committees. And it's not something I love to do, but some people just really like the process of seeing big change. So whatever it is, even if it's not on a big scale, I feel like you can work little 1%ers every day, every week to make even something that you're just average at still pretty good in your immediate vicinity.
Yeah. So look, that's exactly right. And I guess coming back to the average Joe Blow, who's the average candidate who hasn't done anything amazing, and like a lot of people haven't, because med school's tough and internship's tough, and trying to, all this, it takes up a lot of your time. And if you have family and stuff, you're not going to, and you shouldn't spend all of your time at work, right? If you don't want to.
Hold on. But that's what I...
No one told La. So I guess the other thing that's really important is you can actually extract so much value from an experience that you think is really monotonous and like boring and ununique. So if you were on the committee of something really simple when you're in med school or when you're an intern, people just are like, I was on like the medical society, or I was on like a deterring patient committee, or you can go, when I was on the deterring patient committee, there was an instance where where one of the consultants disagreed with me, and I felt like my point wasn't being made. So I found that really challenging. And the way I responded to that was I spoke to my mentor. But you can see, right? You can take a single, simple, irrelevant moment, not irrelevant, but like something that's very kind of benign, and extract a lot of useful information that tells interviewers about you. And I think this is something that people really aren't being told to do or don't think to do.
Okay. Actually, we'll talk a lot more about that in the interview session. I think that's good. So in summary, really try to find what you're all about.
Yeah.
You know, what's your point of difference? What you get out of bed for, what interests you, like what is really where you want to be in the future and how you want to, present yourself, maybe your brand, or I think you mentioned as well.
Yeah. So I love the term brand. So I think find just a number of facets of yourself that you think that you're impressive in, or you're unique, or is really important to you. That authenticity is really important. And then try make that just a big part of your application. And I'm a big fan of having a very consistent message in your CV, your cover letter, and your interview. If you have, nothing about research in your CV, but then you're sitting in an interview saying, I love research and I really want to do a PhD, that inconsistency, they might understand that you're really interested in it, but that inconsistency, I think, breeds a bit of distrust because you're saying something that is incongruent with what they've read about you.
Yeah. Actually, I remember being on an interview panel and someone had a very, I think it was a very anaesthetic or critical care CV, and they were applying for a medical year. And I said, so why are you applying for a medical year? It looks like you really like anaesthetics. Yeah. And they just said point blank, look, this is my backup. You're right, I want to do anesthetics, but I really want a job as well. I thought, I really respect it because that's honest. And you think that that's the wrong answer, but that's absolutely, for me, that was the right answer. Do not lie. You know?
I do not. Yeah, and I think be honest. People know you have backups. I mean, this is a separate point. We'll get to in the interview, but I think be honest and don't try to hide the truth. And if you ask something point blank, don't lie, because again, there's usually a reason. Because there's a sense of mistrust, or they know something you think they don't know.
Yeah.
So I think just have a consistent profile is something I'm a big fan of.
Excellent. So something we wanted to go into more detail after the general approach to the application process was some of the specific details into how to find a crit care job. So I know you've done it most recently, Cass. So what did you go through?
So I have a process by which I try to acquire as much information as possible.
Not OCD at all.
No, should be CDO, by the way. So I try to find out as much information as possible. So essentially, I just chatted to people who are doing the quick care job. I chatted to people who've done the quick care job, and I just read the documentation available, and you just talk to people, and you can get so much information about something. And this applies to everything. So that there's other really competitive jobs like the pediatric job, surgical training positions, medical years, advanced training medical years. There's been thousands of people who have done this before you. You are not paving the way in getting into training, especially program, or even trying to get an internship, or even trying to get into a med school, whatever you're trying to do. So talk to people. If you don't do that, you're really giving yourself a disservice. So
I'm pretty sure this was also an Anthony Robbins tip. A mate of mine told me just years and years ago, which was, look at the person who is where you want to be and find out how they got there.
Yeah.
And so on a small scale, what did the person the year before you do? And what did the person 5 years, 10 years from you do? What did they do as well? So I like that.
And I think beware of the person who said it just happened to them, or that it wasn't that hard, because like none of these specialty training programs are easy at all. And I can't think of a single one that's easy. And I think anyone who says, I just applied, or I don't know, it was like I didn't really think I wanted it, but I got it. I think either they're exceptional and they're just very phenomenal people who just don't have to try very hard in life.
Yeah.
Or they're lying.
Yep, that's right. Everything is hard work.
Yeah. But it is.
Hard is good. Okay, good. So find out the details, read the documents. I know the position descriptions can be pretty boring to read, but there might be some subtle things in there that will help you frame the way you write your cover letter. Yeah. You can see what that department really wants.
So I guess as a kind of a quick care supervisor, what's your perspective on kind of people emailing you for advice or asking you what to do? Because it happens, I think, with every job. Yeah,
it's a good question. I think, we get a lot of emails, and generally speaking, because we get a lot of emails, I think most of us, what I've seen is we'll always reply to the emails for these crit care jobs. But if people want to meet up, that's where it might be a bit more difficult. If they're not in your actual hospital, it might be more difficult to team up a time to actually meet up and talk about things. So generally, people don't do meet and greets for this, but they do. We do reply emails, and often it's just referring to the position description and giving general information about the job. But I think it's useful. I mean, it's part of the process. Even if someone doesn't reply to you, that's all part of it. At least you wrote an email saying, "Hey." Once we get to consultant jobs, I'll tell you what I went through to get to consultant jobs. But it was, it's absolutely a process, and it's thorough, and it's like probably applying for med school. That was probably the hardest thing for a lot of people up to this stage, which is, you've got so many deadlines. You've got your own exams to do. If you're going to state, you've got to look at the deadlines for colleges and accommodation, and then time of everything with flights and interviews, and in COVID times, who knows what that looks like as well. So. That's probably how I'd look at that.
Yeah. So, I mean, going on from that, I think if you talk to anyone in other fields of kind of professional work, like you talk to someone in like a big law firm and they, said they applied for a job and didn't talk to someone in the firm, they would almost laugh. Like that person would almost be immediately struck off.
All right.
I mean, I'm hypothesizing based on what little I know about the corporate world, but I just think in medicine, we have this fear, and I think we are very almost ashamed of wanting something. So we try to be really blasé and casual about it. And everyone laughs at the person who's a bit intense about everything. But I think you really do have to want it, and you have to show that you want it without being over the top and being annoying.
Yeah. Isn't that one of those things that if you tell people what you want, if people can help, they probably will.
Exactly.
As in, people are generally, I think, good people, and also, say you kind of shout to the world that this is what you like and this is what you want, you'll get people around you that have, similar ideas and might be able to help out and offer value to you. And I think it's a useful thing. That's one of the things I definitely did, which is tell everybody that I want to do anesthetics early on.
And everyone knows someone who's someone important, or someone who's done the job, or someone who's done it and failed. Yeah. And every one of those conversations, I think I spoke to every single one of those people. So people who failed, I spoke to a lot of registrars, and it was all useful. And so I had like a lot of consultants who I'd never met, who I emailed or met and had conversations with, who just genuinely just gave me a chance and would speak to me and give me advice and help. And that, I think, was one of the reasons that then made me want to do anesthetics even more, because I'm like, oh, look at these people, like they're really lovely. they already invested in me, they care about me. And in the medical world where you're, as a junior doctor, you're often just feel so anonymous and forgotten. When someone does do that, it's really helpful.
We really care when the discharge summaries aren't done.
So I guess another question that I think I get asked a lot is, does it matter how much anesthetics you do as a quick care resident, or you've done when you're applying for a quick care job?
Yeah, so I chose my job. I was in the hospital I did the job in, so I was happy to keep in that hospital. I really enjoyed my time there. And that job happened to be 9 months of anesthetics and 3 months of ICU, which is amazingly good.
Dream.
It's a dream, right? And I don't think that exists in many hospitals anymore. But I think to get your job, you genuinely need to have anesthetic experience these days, and you probably need to have it in the first half of the year so that the anesthetic people know you. But then again, I think most hospitals are allowing that to happen in some fashion, whether it's only 6 or 7 weeks of anesthetics. Either way, you can get a look in to meet the people, meet your bosses, meet the supervisors, and have a go. But then some care jobs don't. You just have to perform really well and do everything else right, and get good references. People who will back you, who will, when they get called about a reference, they'll say, yeah, this person is exceptional, and I would hire them every day of the week. Yeah. I think that's what you need to do if you don't have an anesthetic job early on in the year.
Yeah. So I think applying for quick care, I think 2 of my 3 referees were not anaesthetists. One was an orthopedic surgeon, and the other one was a general medicine, so respiratory physician. And they just gave good reference, and I don't think that changed the outcome at all. So I think it was better to get people who are happy to write a lot about me in detail than someone just for the job title. Yes. For the anesthetic program, I think it's a bit different. I think it's generally preferable to have 3 anaesthetists. I think if you've done a quick care year and you've done 3 to 6 months of anesthesia and you can't get 3 anaesthetists to be your references, it's I would say, if I was on the panel, I'd be like, but why?
Yeah, and what would I say about that? So if you've done a quick care job, still the quick care job potentially only has you having 6 to 7 weeks. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, interesting.
Actually, I know that I'm okay with that. especially if, you've really, we'll get to this in references, but you'll work with, there's so many consultants, you work with one of them maybe max twice, 3 times. How are you possibly going to get a good reference from more than 2, maybe, if you're lucky? So I think it's completely okay. But if you had 9 months of anesthetics, you better believe you should have enough anesthetic support for that. Now, I think one of those interesting thing is to know how many people succeeded from a crit care position to anesthetic training position. And there could be these variables, what was it was easy to get a reference, were you getting enough consultant time, and were the consultants involved in the selection process, as well as the number of jobs available as an anesthetic trainee. So I guess if you're in a hospital scheme, so if you have a low number of crit care jobs going to a larger number of anesthetic training positions, you think your odds are a bit better. But if you're going from having lots of crit care trainees to a lesser number of training positions, it might be a bit harder to get into. If you're in a training scheme that will compile a lot of different hospitals, this might be a bit more of a complex equation, but you can probably do the numbers on that. How many crit care people in that training scheme and how many positions in that hospital scheme, which comprises a few hospitals. So that's, just one thing to have a talk with people about. You're calling as many people as you can, emailing them, trying to find out what's the lay of the land. And I think these are interesting things that will come out.
Exactly. And I think, there are a lot of nuances. There are places that do very well. There are places that fluctuate. There are places that, so it does change year to year. So I think trying to find out the lay of the land, what the success rates are, you're just really optimizing your chances. In saying that, I think, there are always people who do exceptionally well from hospitals and crit care jobs that aren't, I guess, often successful in getting people on the program. So I think, you still are the agent of your own success. But I think if you want to optimize your chances, and it's a multifaceted reason, right? There's cultural reasons. Some hospitals have a lot of training of their crit care residents. They get interview practice and things. A lot of hospitals don't. But I think, if certain crit care jobs are very successful at getting people on programs, they're doing something right. And it's often intangible, I think. So I think there should be a element in your consideration.
No, that's good. So look, I think that's actually enough for this episode. So we'll go on with more information about references, the cover letter, CV, interviews in the next few episodes. Just as a summary, we went through the general approach to the application process, about having, being authentic to yourself and finding that point of difference, as well as how to find that critical care job, and just having a look around of, exactly, what are the different facets of each job that might make you sway between one or another. So I think that's a good summary.
All right, well, that's it. Thanks for joining us for this episode. Please share this with anyone who's interested in anesthesia or currently in the process of applying for any specialty program, really. And we will see you in the next episode.
See you guys. Thanks.